Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today with a bonus upload. I am joined by Colton. Colton, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me once again.
No problem, man. I'm excited to have you on. You're the perfect guy to talk to about this because I woke up to the news. You just woke up to the news that there's a secret little, I don't know, hidden update that they just went to maintenance a few hours ago to add to the game. They didn't announce it, but people discovered it really quickly in the game. And it's the ability to change your starting hand to basically, or not starting hand, your entire deck to a fixed rotation. So you can decide from now it's just in friendly battles, but that really affects competitive play. I think it has like a lot of indicators down the road, which we'll talk about. But it really does change everything in the way that you play a deck or a match or any match. So why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts on it? I know you had a lot of thoughts on starting hand issues and stuff like that competitively before this update. So does this solve any of those problems? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so this is something that we had only been talking about on Twitter like a day or two ago. So I'm kind of wondering if that was a response to this. If so, that's amazing. But maybe they had it in the works previously. It's not the first time we've talked about it either. But either way, it sounds like at the very least they're listening.
Indeed.
I know someone else that we talked to made a Reddit post, but yeah, so it's cool to see them responding. And just recently, they also are allowing some pros that we made a group to like send them balance change suggestions, and they also published that one form on Reddit about asking the community for answers to questions. Some were a little bit funny, but some were pretty serious, and they actually wanted feedback on. So I think it's a really awesome direction they're going with asking for feedback from the community, and more than ever they're listening to pro players that play this game at a high level and helping them make the competitive side of things better. So as far as the randomized cards go, I mean, versus setting your order, Swoot even commented, I saw, that he doesn't think a full-on set rotation of all 8 cards is the best, and they even responded to him and said this is just a test phase to gather data, and that's really awesome because I think what we're going to see is the people who set their rotation are going to have a higher win rate by quite a bit because you don't have awkward hands. So the one thing with like a full set rotation I don't like is you become, and this is something Nightlight mentioned as well, you become too cookie cutter, and like how you play, you automatically do the same thing every game. I'm not a big fan of that. I think opening play should be a little bit different. But I do think every game should play out a little bit differently. I do like that aspect of the game, but the reason it is pivotal to not have a completely random starting hand is because you can just have terrible answers to whatever your opponent. Like if they play a hog and the only thing you have in your hand is like bats, ice golem, and then spells, your opponent has zap, and then you're just screwed. You instantly take like 4 hog swings because you have to rotate to another defensive card. But maybe that same deck that you're playing had like a mini pack in it, so you had no right taking like 4 hog swings. So I do think that there's obviously issues to both sides, but the big thing with that is both your opponent starting with like something offensive, and then also pumps are a really big issue. This is something I touched on. At King's Cup, Golem was popular, and I was good with the deck. I was really good with the deck, actually. And I played a Golem mirror match 5 times in the final round that would advance you to the top 8. 2 times when my opponent and I both started with pump and rotation, I won. I beat like Aw Crap and Batman, I think. I know Aw Crap was one of them. That game was very close, but don't quote me on the Batman one. I don't remember. But then I faced it 3 other times versus June and Skills. June twice, Skills once. And Pump was my 7th, 7th, 8th, and 8, or 7, 7, 8 in those games.
Ouch.
And my opponent had it first, and 5th. So first, and then he rotated 1 card.
Yeah, that's really tough.
And in that matchup with Night Witch, if you have to poison a pump, they go Golem, they go Night Witch, and then your poison is out of rotation, and you lose on that push.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really rough, man.
so and there's like literally just nothing you could do, and it kept me from qualifying for top 8 in Kings Cup. So I'm pretty passionate about disliking that aspect for sure.
Sure. Let me
Yeah,
let me ask you this, Colton.
yeah,
So
for sure.
I have a few thoughts here. Let me start with playing let me start actually before I play devil's advocate to Nightlight's statement. I do want to ask about, you mentioned Swood's rebuttal about how possibly the starting hands, having them too cookie cutter is a bad thing. So where do you think the happy medium lies? Do you think that it should be like selecting 2 of your starting cards, selecting 4 of your starting cards, but not the rest of the order? Like, where do you think the happy medium is?
So I think in that same response, Wu suggested that I kind of like the idea of making one or picking one card that is in every starting hand, and then picking one card that is never in your starting hand. I kind of like that. I think that's a
That's
happy
cool.
medium to where there's still randomness. But like if I'm playing a miner deck, miner is always going to be in my starting hand because if they pump, I can punish it. Um, it's not terrible on defense. Maybe if I have to use it,
Yeah.
and then for like the card that I would never want in my starting hand, um, in a miner deck, I don't know, but like in a golem deck, it's gonna be the golem. Um,
For sure. Yeah.
and if it's a pump golem deck, the card you want in your starting hand is pump. Um, or maybe for the miner deck, maybe the card you don't want in your hand is whatever is the most expensive. Like if it's a miner deck with like maybe Prince in it, you don't want Prince in your starting hand, perhaps. I mean, miner decks really don't have that bad of starting hands. It's more so for pump decks. Pump decks have like the biggest issue to where like
Yeah.
you have like a 20% lower chance of winning a game if your pump is your 8th card.
And
Um,
yeah, that and you know, just I mean that's the most obvious, blatant, explicit example of starting hands totally
Yeah.
screwing someone over. But what about like in a cycle deck? Let's just pretend that you're gonna enter into a 1v1 determined draft order tournament tomorrow, and you're playing like, I don't know, a relatively cheap minor deck. Do you think it would, just given the current parameters where you can dictate every single card, do you think it would be smart to put your cycle cards very last? Or should you put them first so you can cycle to the other cards?
I mean,
Or does it
if
not
you're
matter? 'Cause
cycling
these-
to the other, I feel like it doesn't matter as much because for the controlled like cycle deck, I feel like your play is more going to be dictated based on what your opponent does and what your opponent's deck is, than cycling at the beginning. Because then at that point you don't know what you need to cycle. Like if you're playing balloon cycle, you don't start the game with like balloon or anything. You just kind of wait and see what their counters are. You're going to start with like something in the back or like a small minor push with skeletons or something. So I mean, if you're playing like balloon cycle, the only thing you don't want to start with is a balloon. So other than that, you just kind of play defensive early on. I guess you would want to start with like skeletons in the back just to be passive and to get your opponent to play something, maybe like minor. Once to do like a little offensive push, and then you just kind of have to figure out where your opponent is. I think that's kind of in common with all cycle decks. If I'm playing a hog cycle, you typically actually play a hog at the beginning to see what they're playing because hog is less risky than balloon. But I don't really think it matters too much on cycle decks. I mean, it's like hog cycle, you do want hog in your first hand so you can play it. But for balloon, you don't, because balloon gives your opponent much more time to build up a big push that punishes the deficit that you just spent on the balloon.
Okay, that makes sense. So my rebuttal for Nightlight, who I love, by the way, is this, and I might be totally wrong here, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here and see if you can have a response to this. So if every starting hand and the entire rotation was predetermined, meaning that there was a game mode that existed in the game, such as right now, where you could determine everything about your entire rotation, set it up perfectly the way you want it to. How would that be much different from a game like chess? And I hate to make that comparison, but just stick with me for a second. That the starting situation is always 100% the same for both players in chess, but then there's millions and millions and millions of possible outcomes. Don't you think there's enough like meta strategy and just all the possible random acts that happen throughout the match that would make matches like, let's just say, okay, I'm playing a golem deck and I'm going against a minor control deck, and this is how it's supposed to be played, just like a chess match. But then, oh, this guy's, what is he doing? He's playing this not the way it's supposed to be played, and like it actually gives the game an opportunity to almost have like a textbook way of playing and then different variations off that. Do you think that's interesting at all, or not really?
I mean, I'm not saying I would hate it, but I like it better now where they're. So I wouldn't even call it randomness that the game right now. You get like a different starting hand, so it's a little bit different, but I think that's okay. I just think it needs the lessened element of it. I think only, like I said, I don't think every deck suffers from this issue, but I don't think the other decks deserve to suffer from it. Maybe you would have to, maybe the cards that benefit from this would have to be tuned down a little bit. You would have to kind of feel it out. Which is another thing that Clash Royale is doing awesome, by the way. Like they got a balance update like less than 3 weeks. That's awesome.
Unbelievable, yeah, right.
My dream for Clash Royale would be like a balance update 3 to 4 weeks, like every time. Like that would be awesome because they address issues more often and just keep it fresh.
Indeed, I'm with you there. I think even once a month would be cool with me, but yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Same with me. Yeah. And it makes it coincide with ladder a little bit better if it's once a month. But yeah, I think I do think full on starting 8 cards like so the problem is I think it would be more random for like the average player, but I think for competitive players where you almost know exactly what to do because you play it over and over again until you get it perfect, I would say it would become too chess like. Like if you mess up like one card in the first 8 cards, maybe you lose or something, and I don't really like that type of gameplay. I think chess is boring to watch, and if you make Clash Royale more like chess, then it becomes more boring to watch. It's less random. Each game feels less unique, even if there are deviations. So I think it's better to have a slight fix like Swood suggests and like Nightlight thinks we shouldn't do, like with the chess type format. So I do think all 8 is a mistake, but I think a lesser version of that will be really good for the game in both casual and competitive.
And, as a final thought too, and a final question on my end is, regardless of whether it's setting all 8 or just 2 of the 8, or even having different game modes, different standard play standards for each. So you enter into a tournament, even like I can see a future where you enter into a live tournament, sort of like Magic the Gathering, and they're just, okay, what mode are we playing? Like there's different modes. Maybe it's a draft tournament. Maybe it's a total fixed order tournament. Maybe it's just, like you said, something somewhere in the middle. Can you just speak, before we let you go, Colton, about maybe the overall impact a decision like this could kind of snowball into for the competitive scene? Do you like this type of addition to the game?
Yeah, I think absolutely it'll make competitive more reliable. I mean, for me, the ideal thing for competitive play is you make it to where the better player wins every time. And while I do agree, like if it's a best of 5, I think the better player wins most of the time. When you get into like best of 3 territory and obviously best of 1 territory, the more fixes you make to make the game less random, the more happy I'll be as a competitive player because I can deal with losing, but I really dislike losing when it wasn't my fault and I had no control over what happened. Like I was enraged at Kings Cup where I lost 3 games that would have almost definitely put me in the top 8. 2 of them were back to back, and I think if I had won the first one, I would have been able to sit and I would have made it in top 8 for Kings Cup. So as a competitive player, I lost thousands of dollars because Pump wasn't in my starting hand. And it was in my opponent's starting hand, which is just really bad luck, which is unfortunate because I don't mind losing when I get outplayed, and I don't mind losing when I don't play well enough. But if it's completely random and RNG based, then you have a lot of frustrations. So, I mean, for the viewer's sake that's watching that, and for the player's sake, it would be really awesome if some element. I mean, I'll go as far to say that I would prefer 8 chosen cards over the current randomness, But I would prefer the like 1 to 2 or the 2 card suggestion, like where not one in this. You don't start with one hand ever, one card ever, and you always start with one other. I would prefer that, but I would prefer the 8 more than the none, because I don't like the complete randomness, and I don't think this will be too big of a change. Like for the average player, I don't think they would even really notice it, honestly. I mean, maybe if they just throw their win condition at the bridge at the beginning of the game, it doesn't work as often, but I don't feel like that should be a rewarded play anyway. Other than Hog, to where Hog is the reason it kind of works with Hog is because, and maybe people don't do this with Hog if this becomes the case, because your opponent's always going to have a counter. Like I know a card that I would really like to always start with if I have it in my deck is like Mini P.E.K.K.A. So you have like that kind of like if they throw a Miner, if they throw a Hog, you always just kind of have like that strong card that can stop it, or Giant maybe as well. So maybe that doesn't happen as much, but I mean the main reason it's okay with Hog is because it's really fast. And the reason you don't do it with Miner is because if they have Elixir Collector and you throw it at the tower, then you're in trouble.
Hey, do you think this should be added to ladder? I lied. This is the last question. Do you think this should be added to other game modes as an option, or no?
Yeah, I think it should. Like, so what's the alternative? What mode is it in right now? I haven't even gotten into the game since I woke up.
Right now, it's just friendly battles. That's it.
Okay, no, I think it should be added to every mode to stay consistent. I don't, not yet. Like they would have to figure out the statistics and like refine it. But like I said, I would also like the variation I suggested. But they did say they were considering it. This was just like a test run. So yeah, I think it. I mean, if you implement it, I think it gets implemented in every game mode.
I would think since ladder is already so not even in terms of card levels, I think that at least it should be an option to enter into grand challenges or classic challenges using fixed card order. That way your opponent is too. If you want to. So I think that
test it out first, perhaps.
Yeah. But anyway, man, just want to thank you again for coming on and chatting about this. I always love having you on. Do you plan on doing a video covering this on your channel?
Yes. I don't know if it'll be exclusively talking or if it'll just be me playing friendly battles. But we'll see. I'm probably just going to try to quickly release one with an ugly thumbnail. And
Awesome. Well, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you check out Colton's YouTube channel. It's Colton W83. I'll include the link for you guys as well as his social media in the description below. Colton, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
No problem. Guys, that's going to do it. I want to hear your thoughts on this fixed card rotation secret update. Do you guys like it? Do you guys not like it? What can be done to tweak it, make it better perhaps? Props again on behalf of Colton, myself, and most of the community for actually taking this feedback and implementing it into the game. Huge shout out to my YouTube partner, Bren Chong. Check out his information in the description below. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And as always, take care, guys.